Did you know that it's scholarship season? So hello, my name is Ruth, and thankfully to date, I've been able to achieve a master's scholarship in different areas and also a PhD scholarship, all fully funded. So in today's video, since it's scholarship season, I thought it'd be wise to share with you some tips in helping you find a scholarship. So the first tip I would say was actually my most used tip. I truly believe that this tip helped me, especially for my PhD, and allowed me to kind of save things as I looked on websites. So the first tip is to look on scholarship databases. So this could be the British Council, this could be Find a Master's, this could be Find a PhD. So on this database, it actually has, master's programs, it has PhD programs, and especially on Find a PhD and Find a Master's, it shows you whether or not this particular program has funding or whether or not you need to self-fund it. So I was on this website looking at the latest PhDs and latest master's program and seeing if they were fully funded or not. And this was a great way for me to actually see what programs were fully funded, especially in the line of the PhD that I got. This was very helpful. The second tip I would share with you is one that I would say is not really conventional, and many people may not even know that their workplace is actually offering this. So the second tip is actually securing funding through a work organization. So I can share with you two things. So there was a time when I was doing this training program, and on this training program, if you stayed within that organization, you actually did a master's program. So if you left early or anything, that means that you didn't get the master's, but if you stayed within it, you got a fully funded master's program. There was also a time where I took a break from my current sector and went to a different sector, and that program was also geared on a master's as well. So you worked full time, you studied full time, and as long as you stayed within the organization, you had an MA in that particular industry. And at that time, it was the accountancy one. So as well, we can see that some work organizations can fully fund you on a master's program or a PhD, depending on, what they have in their pot and in terms of the money they have aside for fully funded programs. Another thing that also came to mind is I know someone who was working within an organization, and at that time she believed that she needed more education, to be better at her role. And she basically contacted, her organization, told them about why she believed she needed this, degree, this master's, and they actually fully funded, her master's. They paid for her tuition. So many a times we do not receive because we do not ask, because we may not know that our organization actually has money aside for us in order to develop in terms of our education. So tip number 3, I would say, is about checking university websites directly, because funny enough, I found that some university websites won't go straight to the databases like Find a Master's UK or Find a PhD UK. And I found that when I directly looked at university websites, I was able to find, different scholarships that they're offering, whether it be a fee waiver, whether it be a fully funded university website. Actually specifically wrote down things which were funded or not funded, and I could look at it and say, okay, I match that or I don't match that. So the university website itself, really helps in terms of finding funding. So my advice would be, to think about what course you want to do, think about what university you're willing to go to, and look directly at those websites to kind of see, is there anything on there that you would be eligible for. So tip number 4, I would say, is to reach out to universities and departments directly. I feel like in terms of me finding funded, I did a combination of this, because I actually did reach out to the department that I'm in currently, and I reached out to my supervisor. And there's actually a long story about this, because my supervisor actually helped me at the end of it get 50% of my funding. And I felt that that would have never happened if I didn't reach out to the department and I didn't reach out to my supervisor. So I would say, reach out to these specific departments to inquire about scholarships, because many times they do have dedicated staffs who know about scholarships, and these scholarships may have not been publicized yet. So if you message them, you would be in the know-how about these scholarships. Also as well, sometimes your department or body, if you do a PhD within that area, automatically they will be funding for you. So it depends on what type of university you are in. And I know that was an experience of a lady who I met at a conference last year. She said automatically when you apply, there's in her department, there are funding for that. But you may not know if you don't contact the department or supervisor, because it isn't as publicized as things like, Find a Masters UK or Find a PhD UK. Before going into this next tip, I would say that these are things I've done and I've seen the results, and I know that these things work. So dear friends, to support this channel, to keep me going, make sure you like and subscribe and share it with someone who you know will benefit this. So the fifth tip I would say would be to check for government scholarships. So some government scholarships offer, scholarships for citizens abroad who want to study in the UK. So the most common scholarships of these government scholarships are, the Commonwealth Scholarship. So this basically means that if you are from a Commonwealth country, you can apply for funding for a master's or a PhD. And the other common one is the Chevering Scholarship. So this is a prestigious scholarships that are funded by the UK government in order to cover, tuition fees, living costs and other costs. And they're available for students from, these eligible countries. So if you want to see if you're eligible, click the link and all these things will be in the bio. So the next tip is tip number 6. And this applies for those who are from the USA who want to study in the UK. And this is to look at the Marshall Scholarship. This scholarship will support a master's or PhD in the UK. And again, further detail will be in the bio for this. Tip number 7, not 6. So tip number 7 is in terms of external funding, to explore funding from private organizations, foundations or charities, because many a times there may be organizations that want to look at specific research and they are offering funding based on that, so you can help them with their research. So it's kind of like a two-way. You help them with research in a certain area and they fund you for your research. So these may be discipline specific but open to students from various backgrounds. So you can just use an online database and, scholarship portals to find these relevant opportunities. The tip number 8 is in regards to research councils and funding bodies. So research councils and funding bodies provide, scholarships for postgraduate research. And this is mostly PhD researchers. So programs like the Arts and Humanities Research Council or the Engineering and Physical Science Research Councils. And so there's just different ones that offer scholarships. So go on these research councils bodies, depending on, I don't even know why I keep saying bodies, but go on these research councils and funding bodies so that you can look at these ones in pertaining to your specific discipline, and they can be, funding for particular areas of your interest. Tip number 9 is about subscribing. So I would recommend you to subscribe to mailing lists of, universities, funding bodies, scholarships, search engines, and etc. to receive regular updates about scholarships. For my first master's, this is actually how I found out about the scholarship. I believe that I was signed up to the website called postgrad.com and also Masters Compare. So I got this email, and right at the bottom, it was like, the University of Sheffield is offering this scholarship on this area. And I clicked on it and I was like, wow, I should definitely apply. So I would really recommend subscribing to the different areas, subscribing to these universities, the search engines, because you never know, one day they could send out a scholarship and you may fit the criteria and then thankfully get a funded opportunity to study further. Tip number 10 is to attend educational fairs. I also remember doing this as well. I attended a master's/PhD fair, and there were just like different universities from all over the UK. So I got to speak to people, and through that, you kind of gauge to see whether or not, you want to study there as well. But also as well, you get to see whether or not they're offering funding for a particular area or particular research as well. So I would recommend attending an educational fair, not only as well for finding funding, but giving you an insight about whether or not you want to study at this university and finding more information for you in order for it to be more clear in terms of where you want to study. It's all about networking. I would say personally, networking can be quite outside of my comfort zone. I do like to talk to people, but this cold calling networking is not always the best for me. But I would say that for me, what I've done is I may send an email about my interest, and then further along the lines, book a Zoom call, because that way I can see, I'm interested in this. When you're passionate about something, you're able to talk about it. So that's kind of how I've done it. I've been able to, reach out to people and say, this is my area of interest. This is what I would like to do. And through those conversations, people can share with you, what their interest is and whether or not they actually have any funding within their organization, within their university. And that could also be a way as well to gain more clarity as well and to build connections as you're finding funding for your research, for your PhD, or for your master's program. With this networking as well, I would add as well, LinkedIn is quite helpful. I wasn't really looking for scholarships on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn has really good groups on there where, let's just say your interest is this. You never know, being part of that group, someone can share something and it could be like, wow, this is something right up my street. I'm going to apply, and then you never know, it could also be funded. So using the tools that we have in order to networking is not always that cold calling networking that I, talked about, where you're in a room with many people and you just have to talk to them. Networking can be networking online. It can be sending emails. It can be, scheduling meetings on Zoom, etc. It can be different forms of networking. So the next 3 tips are just tips in terms of just to think about while you want to apply for this scholarship. Tip number 11 is about providing a strong application. For me, when I was applying for, my master's program, a PhD program, I thought to myself, what are my differences? What are the things in life that I've had, that I've been through, which were probably obstacles, and how did I overcome it? And I kind of implemented these things, in my application, whether it be being someone who is Black, within further education, you don't really see much Black lecturers. So I saw this as, this is something that I want to add into my application about why I want to be part of this program, to inspire and also to increase representation. So think about your life. Is it that you were always passionate about this topic, but you never had the opportunity because of lack of funds? But having this scholarship will allow you to study without thinking about money all the time. Think about what is unique to you. Think about the successes. Think about, maybe you had some volunteering experience in this area and you thought, wow, this will be really nice for me to dive into this, or you've always been passionate about research, or this is just a natural progression for you. Think about your life, think about what is unique to you, and make sure they're able to feel that flavor in your application. Tip number 12, I would say, is to pay attention to deadlines. It's scholarship season, there's so much out there, and we can be quite overwhelmed with, trying to get this deadline or that deadline. So what I did, I had a spreadsheet. So I had what I was applying for, the deadline, and also what I needed to do in order to apply. So keep up to date with your deadlines and make sure you're able to submit it before the deadline. I remember for the PhD, I actually ended up I saw this PhD funding a bit late, so I had to quickly get a supervisor, quickly organize it. And even though it was such a short time, I was able to put it in because I thought this is an amazing opportunity. And I did not want to leave the deadline. So there may be times that you see something a bit late, but I would encourage you just to apply because you never know, you may be successful in that. So apply, look at the deadline, but make sure you submit it beforehand. And also something I would say is that one of the PhDs I applied for, the one I actually ended up going for, had like this 2 deadline type of thing where I had to submit to the university officially by this date, but also to the scholarship at a certain date as well. So making sure you're aware of the multiple deadlines within the actual deadline. Some universities were quite straightforward where there was only one deadline, but for this particular one, there was different multiple ones. You had to do each step along the way. So make sure you pay attention to this so that you do not miss out on the opportunity. So the last tip I would say is in your search, be persistent, be consistent, because I would say having funding is not it's not a common thing to have funding. So you are going to have to look and be diligent, to motivate yourself, not even motivate, keep yourself determined, because motivation is fleeting and that's a whole nother topic. So I would really recommend that in finding your scholarships, be diligent and active in your search, be persistent, be regularly, searching for new opportunities, and also apply to multiple scholarships. Don't just think, oh, you've got your perfect one and that's it. Apply for different ones and just, see where it ends up. And one thing I actually forgot to mention was something I did as well. I'm not really a big fan of Twitter. I think it's called X now. I would also type in, like, for example, funded PhD and just write that health inequalities, or because that was the area of interest I wanted to do. I would write funded PhD UK, stuff like that in Twitter. And I was able to find so many great opportunities on there by just searching, these key terms. So that was something I was really doing. And that was a way as well, like on my Instagram page, I was able to share scholarships with you. Mostly that was from the Twitters, me searching on Twitter, and also find a PhD, find a master's, etc. All these tips combined. But yes, that was a bonus tip for you. Hope you really enjoyed this video. I would say, all the best in your application. I want to wish you all the best in your application. So I've been there when I've been looking, and you just think to yourself, when will that day come? But you have to keep consistent, keep persevering. And if this is something you truly desire, do not give up. Ask for help as well. Ask other people to help you, because this journey will truly be worth it when you're able to say, yes, I've got my fully funded or partial funded scholarship. So all the best, and see you in the next one. Bye.